Good evening everyone, Varda here, bringing you Age of Sigmar Stormground, which is the new roguelike set in the Age of Sigmar universe. I am going to be playing as the Stormcast Eternals warrior for my first campaign, and although I've already played a little bit, this is going to be a mostly blind playthrough, all of the experiences and such being seen for the first time.
The Stormcast Eternals are mortal heroes that have been remade into godlike warriors in the forges of Azir, each the embodiment of Sigmar's storm. They are the God King's wrath, made manifest, and they were created for one single purpose: outright war.
Alright. And so, without further ado, we will get into selecting our warband and things like that. So, I feel like before we begin, I should mention that ordinarily I wouldn't do a recording like this, where the footage has already been taken and I will talk over it. But I was unfortunate enough to have the microphone audio of my original recording, for whatever reason, not function, not appear in the file whenever I tried to edit and upload. So, I thought instead of discarding the footage entirely, I would just give you a different kind of commentary. Here you can see me selecting the first units that I will have available to me within the campaign. The game gives you cards as rewards, and as you go through and you unlock better cards and better units as a result, you can hopefully go further and further into the levels and conquer more challenges. But I'm sure you all know how a roguelike works. I'm going to be grabbing the level 2 castigators in a moment, and I think I'm also going to pick up the liberators, castigators being crossbow troops and liberators being, in this case, hammer infantry. This screen here is where you select your warband, the circles representing a singular unit, and we are all under the command of the Lord Celestant or Lady Celestant Freya. Now, this is the map, Thanator's Manse. It's the unassailable fortress of the undead that we are about to assault. It tells you the strength of the enemy warband on this tab on the left here, as well as what you can expect to find. In this case, a common skill and a common scout class card. Once you've assessed what you can take with you into the and chosen your battleground, that is when you get into the game's nitty-gritty. Here I'm just playing with some audio settings because this game is really, really loud. I'm sort of taking a look at the battleground here, and one of the first things it points out is that there is raised terrain that we can use to our advantage. And different types of terrain, different hexes, or hexagons, will be something that's quite important as we move on into the later episodes and harder battles. You can see that in a bolt of lightning I have just brought Lady Freya down onto the battlefield, and my first unit of castigators to give her some ranged support. I'm just taking another look at the battleground, and now I will end my first turn and let the enemy advance. And you can see that this fight doesn't exactly start spectacularly for me. I lose half my castigators instantly. So, as you probably already noticed, this game is a turn-based system. You have a limited number of tiles you can move, and a limited number of actions you can perform, very similar to games such as XCOM or other side, probably most notably XCOM. Now, I started with 2 archer units, and at the time I thought that would be wise because it would give me some ability to control the battlefield, flooding my very tanky melee hero forward into the gaps, and using her to block the enemy units from getting to my archers. However, the castigators have a very limited range, and you can see that with the use of the high ground, my forces took quite the pounding before we even started fighting. By and large, this is how the process of battle works. Now, the astute among you may have noticed that the current objectives list destroy the enemy warband and destroy wave 1. Yes, that's right, there is another wave. 2 of my units are already at half health. Suffice it to say that this battle gets a little bit dicier than I was expecting for a first fight, to be honest. And I think that largely came down to my unit selection of the 2 castigators, rather than bringing something a little bit tankier that can boost the armor on my hero like the Liberators. Or maybe ultimately it just came down to some bad decision making on my part. This was only the 4th mission I think I've done total. I played about an hour on stream, got used to the interface, and then decided that I wanted to bring the content to YouTube and stopped playing. There's a lot of me sort of mousing over, getting familiar with the controls, making sure that I have done everything that I need to do. And because of that, I am going to fast forward things a little bit, and I will show you how they end up in just a moment. Here we are now at the start of the 2nd phase. We've got a good position with our melee hero up front. However, the enemy has spawned in ranged units onto the high ground, which gives them a distinct advantage, as I can neither get up to the high ground to challenge them or hit them from my current range. There you see me picking up the chest and gaining some loot, which we will get to see after the battle. And over on the left you can see another sort of shining urn that I just hovered over briefly there. And that is a lore cache. You pick those up just to get a bit more information, a little bit of the story. They're voice acted. It's kind of cool. And I've been trying to get as many of them as possible, as you will see in future episodes. What I'm doing now when it says channeling and launches the red bolts at the enemy is a delayed action. I cast it, and then at the start of my next turn, anything that occupies the square I mark takes bonus damage. Obviously it can be a little bit hit or miss, but if you can funnel the enemy into certain positions, that is something that you can use to your advantage, and it's something that I try to use to my advantage, however futilely here. You can see that over on the top left, and this is something I didn't realise to begin with, that enemies can claim the resources and information on the battlefield to deny them to the player. And so those mini objectives are something that I found quite important to focus down, at least if they are somewhere that the enemy can easily access. If they're sort of off in the corner somewhere, I'm not too worried about it. If they're in the centre or on a pathway, I try to take the initiative and seize them and work on the battle from there. Now you can see that we are more or less winning this battle. However, it's not glorious. It's definitely a Pyrrhic victory, if you can call it that. And I make it worse here because I forget that if you challenge a ranged unit, they fire a ranged projectile at you, and not a melee attack, which I can then counter to kill. Luckily, he turns and focuses the other castigators, so I don't fail this run on turn 1 in the first battle of the playthrough. Because that, honestly, would have sucked. But hey, it's a roguelike. Failing is to be expected, embraced, and endured as such. Now, these are the rewards. We got ourselves a unit of Vanguard Hunters, which is sort of a melee unit with some mid-range capabilities and some battlefield control. And we picked up a Warhammer, a skill, and a miracle. Now, miracles are important, as I sort of casually gloss over the fact I lost 2 of my units on my first battle. Miracles are what allow you to resurrect your troops from the grave. And so the more of them you have, the less important it is taking casualties in battle. However, they are not common, at least in my experience. You can see that we're going to equip the Vanguard Hunters now, and we are going to raise our highest level unit of castigators using the miracle that we have just gained, rewarded ourselves with for victory on the battlefield. You can see that I'm clicking through these now, looking to see if I've got any more units, and I'm a bit confused because what I didn't realise is once you pick your 2 starting units, the only other units you get are ones you pick up through the run. You cannot then access the cards from previous playthroughs after your initial choices, or at least I can't at this point in the campaign. Here you can see I'm having a quick look through the skills menus and the war gear menus just to see what I have available to me as I prepare for the next battle. Alright, here we are. We are at the second battle of this playthrough. And this battlefield is an interesting one because it's separated by a large outcrop of raised terrain in the middle. You can see that there is an Aether wellspring down at the bottom of the screen. Now, Aether is what you use to cast these abilities. If you look at the character tab in the middle of the screen, the next time I hover over a character, you will see that there are glowing abilities with a blue number at their base. And that is Aether. That is the amount of Aether required to cast spells. Claiming one of these Aether Wellsprings will gain you extra Aether at the start of your turn, and as such, is a useful thing to prioritize. My opening gambit is to take control of the high ground, and you can see that I very quickly get swarmed. However, with the high ground acting as a bit of a movement blocker, we do have some more options available to us than we did in the last battle. We also have a slightly different composition of troops, and the high ground protected our archers from taking any major initial damage. You can see that I pull them back and then channel the delayed attack onto the square directly in front of them, so should they be assaulted, they have a means of retaliation unless interrupted. Here you can see that my Vanguard Hunters get pretty much immediately welcomed to the battlefield, and almost sent off of it, to be honest. I regret summoning them in quite as far forward as I did. At this point I was still getting used to the fact that once you summon units in, you have to delay a turn before you can actually use them. My hero here has a plethora of good choices.
It shall be so.
And was able to do some good damage there. This ability I just used, the Bear Trap, is one of the strongest ones the Vanguard Hunters possess that I've found so far. because it allows you to place a trap on a square and any melee units that try to chase your sort of hybrid infantry in the Vanguard Hunters that runs over it takes a large amount of guaranteed damage that ignores armor. Actually, I won't commit to saying it ignores armor, I don't remember, I'd have to check. But it looks like it ignores armor, and if it doesn't, it does 3 points of damage, which is fairly substantial. Here you can see that I'm focusing on picking up the spoils of war, grabbing the chests that spawn conveniently behind me and picking up the units and artifacts. There within, I'm also channeling onto that square there to make sure that they cannot gain purchase towards the hunters. And I use Freya just to finish that unit off. Now, on the screen a second ago, what we saw was a successful armor save being rolled by one of the Blade Revenants. Armor in this game works by reducing damage taken first and foremost, but also by providing armor saves. Armor saves work in that should the damage be lesser or equal to your armor, there is a chance that the damage will be blocked completely. And this number is brought up just under the yellow bar. I'm sure you'll see it in future footage. The more armor that a character has, and the difference between it and the damage, increases or decreases the likelihood that the armor save will be successful and that all the damage will be mitigated. For instance, if I had 4 armor and they did 2 damage, the chance would be higher. You can see that I had a 62% there due to the high ground advantage. And armor saves are pretty useful. Something that the Stormcast have is the ability to put melee units next to one another and increase the armor rating, build a shield wall against damage. It's not something I'm using here, but it's something that I will use in future runs to my advantage. Here, just a little bit further on in the battle, you can see that instead of prioritizing killing the melee units, leaving the ranged and hybrid infantry at the back to defend for themselves with a mixture of channeling and traps, I have sent my Lord Celestin, Freya, over to the right hand side to make sure that I claim the lore cache before the battle is over. Something that I learned very early on is that if you don't claim it, you don't get it at the end just for winning. You have to actively make it a conscious choice whether or not you want to go and pick up the lore cache, the chest, control the Aether well, which is something I didn't do very well this battle at all, or if you want to prioritize your movement in such a way that might give you a tactical advantage, sacrificing the potential for upgrades outside of the base mission rewards, which is something that adds a nice depth and challenge to the combat system. And you can see that I'm just taking a little bit of range damage here. The raised terrain is going to slow me down. But ultimately, these slingers do 1 damage a turn. The 24% armor saves me there quite nicely. Saves me there. And with 1 fell swoop of her blade, Freya secures me the victory. We're going to see that we picked up another skill and a unit of prosecutors, which we will get to see used in the next episode. And that's where I'm going to call it, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you very much for watching. I'm sorry this episode was a bit scuffed. I'm not used to using footage I've pre-recorded and commentating over it, but the next episodes will be done with live commentary. So I hope that you will stick around, continue to watch the series and support the channel. And yes, I'll see you in the next one. Have a fantastic week. Goodbye.